Thanks everybody for coming to the WisPolitics luncheon for March. And of course you know our special guest. And I will formally introduce him after I get through some of the business here. First off, our directories are in our second printing. If you want to order some of those, you can see me after, or you can message info@wispolitics.com. We have the next event here is on April 6th with Charles Franklin, the Marquette University Law School pollster, who's going to talk about the results of the April 4th election. Next week in Milwaukee, we have an event, a clean energy event at Discovery World, a luncheon event that is going to feature somebody from your administration. Maria Redmond, who's head of the Office of Sustainability. Also Justin Warland, who's a Time correspondent that covers energy for Time. And so you're welcome to go to WisPolitics.com and sign up for that. I know that's the first day of the basketball tournament, but you can make an excuse. You can go to the event and then blow off the rest of the day and follow your teams. You have my permission to do that. Okay, now I want to thank our sponsors for this event. Hush Blackwell Strategies, they've been with us since the beginning, although under various names, but thank you, Hush Blackwell. American Family Insurance, Xcel Energy, right here at this table. Got the hot spot. All right, ARP Wisconsin, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wisconsin, and Walmart. Let's hear it for the sponsors. So now, I introduce the governor of the state of Wisconsin, Governor Tony Evers. I think you have some planted guests over there. So I can't. So when the time for question time, all those hands are going to shoot up, and all the softball questions are going to come out. I know that. I'm warned. I know where not to look. Okay, we're going to start off, on just a sober note, but to recognize two people from the political community who recently passed away, Becky Blank and Governor Tony Earl. So, Governor, you knew both of them very well, and I guess let's just reflect on Governor Earl first.
Yeah, Governor Earl, Governor Earl was really a person before his time in a lot of things. You talk about issues of making diversity and inclusiveness a real thing, and he was kind of doing that in his time. And so in addition, he was just the most, he was a Wisconsinite, resilient person, good sense of humor, thoughtful, got along with almost everybody, and he did a great job as governor, even though it was a one term. But I just found his theory of actions were really things that we're still dealing with today, and that he kicked it off and got us headed in the right direction. And obviously he was not only was his issue around diversity similar to what we're talking about today, but also he was a great outdoorsman and cared about the environment and helped, followed up on the Knowles Nelson time that preceded him. So it was sad. He was a great spokesperson throughout his life after he left the governor's office. So going to miss him. He's a true Wisconsinite that really cared about the people.
Yeah, everybody liked Tony Earl, and Governor Thompson, who beat him in '86. They became fast friends too. So it's like Tony he was a good politician, but he got along with everybody.
Yeah.
Now Becky Blank, former chancellor.
I had a chance to go to Becky's funeral, I guess. I'm not sure it was called a funeral, but this last weekend. It was an extraordinary event. People that knew her as when she's at the University of Michigan, people that knew her when she was in federal government, and then here. And you know, I knew her when she went here, but it was here. But the interest I had was her role and love of working at the federal level, and how much, you know, she worked under George W. Bush, she worked under Clinton, and she worked under Barack Obama. And so her history there is kind of an unknown. Obviously, she was an economist, but you could tell she really loved that work, and she worked at it in a obviously bipartisan climate, because she worked for a Republican president. Her work at the university was extraordinary. I'm a graduate, 3-degree graduate at UW, and so her work at UW-Madison was superb. She was, I don't want to say feisty, but she was pretty demanding. But she did it in a way that you could tell she was doing it for the students at UW-Madison. And so she will be greatly missed. She was a really intelligent person. She kind of cut through it and got to the issues at hand. Kind of got the issues. She put that to side. She got it right down to what the major decisions were, and helped the people that she worked with to come to some good conclusions. Obviously, the University of Wisconsin-Madison will miss her. I'll miss her also.
Okay, so rest in peace, Tony Rowe and Becky Blank.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess before we get into budget, there's this Supreme Court election going on. I don't know, have you turned on your TV lately and seen some ads, or?
I try not to.
Yeah, you try not to. Okay. Yeah, okay.
After last November, I tried not to.
You've seen enough.
Yes, I've seen plenty. Yes.
And you don't have to focus groups those ads to know what's going on. So, but okay. So, I mean, it's a national election essentially. It's got national attention. All kinds of money is pouring in here, and it's going to decide the philosophical control of the court. And you've tangled with the conservative court here and there, just a few times. Well, what would a liberal a court that was controlled by the liberal justices mean to you?
Well, and we'll just start with gerrymander. We do have a state that the lines are drawn in a gerrymandered way, and it's not that if they were done fairly that the Democrats would have the majority. I mean, we tried to put together a regular map last time around that was fair, and Democrats were still in a small minority. So the idea that somehow this is going to radically change from Republican to Democrat is wrong. If you look at gerrymandering, and that will happen if there's a liberal court. But at the end of the day, what I believe is that if the makeup of the legislature is relatively close, it forces people to the middle. It forces people to compromise, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And so I'm looking forward. If it works out well, we'll be able to take up our maps, and I think that's clear. And you don't have to wait 10 years to do it. You can do it immediately. Of course, it has to go through the lower courts first. And issues of reproductive health are big in the state. Obviously, if you do any polling and the present situation of an 1849 law that was put into place before women had the right to vote or actually had anything to do with that law, that's very unpopular. And we need to get that straightened out, and the only way it's going to get straightened out is through the courts. And issues of gerrymandering lead to other more thoughtful things happening in the state of Wisconsin through the legislature. So I think it'll make a huge difference. And voting rights, good Lord. There's so many things that have been taken from us that we need to reestablish that. So it's going to be, if it works out, it's going to be a damn good thing.
Okay.
Don't ask me who I'm supporting.
Why not? Isn't it obvious?
No. All I'm saying here, I'll go back to the decision on the court decision on our maps last time around. The court said, send us. First of all, I think it's the first time the Wisconsin Supreme Court has taken up the maps. It's usually gone through federal courts. First time. And the first thing they said was, okay, even though we've never done this before, our criterion is keep them the same. So like nothing's happened over the last 50 years or 10 years or 20 years, keep it the same. And so that was the marker that was set out there. That was something that didn't work, frankly.
Right, but as you point out, even your maps
Right.
did not give Democrats a clear instant majority.
No.
Because Democrats are concentrated in the state, it's hard to draw even if you could,
Right.
with whatever, it'd
No.
be hard to do.
And there's a benefit to that. There's a benefit to that. It forces people to the middle and forces people to compromise.
All right, well, let's talk about compromise.
Okay.
So anyway, the legislature now isn't that close, dominated by Republicans. You give them your budget, and the co-chairs were here last week, and they were saying, well, don't get too excited about that $7 billion. Don't get too excited about all your wish lists. We really don't have as much money as you think. Essentially, putting the brakes on. So, given that, and there were mixed signals on shared revenue coming out last week too.
Yeah.
So, what's your view on your budget now, because it's in their hands, and how do you think it's all going to work out?
Simple question. Well, first of all, we do have a $7 billion surplus. There's no question about that. No matter who measures that, whether it's the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, whether it's other folks, whether it's us, there is a $7.1 billion surplus in the state of Wisconsin that I believe should be used for A, tax relief, but B, take on some issues that have bedeviled us for decades, and whether it's public schools, whether it's fixing our roads, whether it's broadband. And so our proposal basically focused on that, in addition to keeping us solvent. A $7 billion surplus is a truism. I mean, there's nobody argues with that. So and I'm not challenging the leaders or the people that are doing the Joint Finance Committee, leading the Joint Finance Committee, but the bottom line is there's $7 billion out there. Let's figure out what we want to do with that and move on. Now, do I think the conversation has changed? No, I don't. I anticipated that this would be where we're at. I think the tenor of the conversation is a little better than it has been. I think the Republicans were really hoping that I would be defeated, and now they realize that they're stuck with me for at least 4 more years, and decide that it's not worth the effort to be particularly divisive in their rhetoric. So I'm hopeful. I mean, we have a good proposal out there that's going to solve lots of problems. I'll use childcare as an example. I've spent the last 2 days visiting childcare facilities in the state of Wisconsin, and if we don't do something there, that industry, quote unquote, is going to collapse. It's just going to collapse. And some people might say, well, that's great, then mom or dad has to stay home. Well, I don't believe that, but some people might. But then on the other end of it is that if that industry collapses, how many people are going to leave the workforce? And we already have a shortage. I mean, my God, So just issues like that, that one doesn't come to the top a lot, and I just happen to be visiting those folks over the last couple of days. But whatever instead of saying we don't have enough money, tell me what the damn plan is. Tell me what, they need to come back. I put my plan out there. I think it's a reasonable plan. They need to get to work and get it done.
Okay, since you mentioned childcare affordability and the connection to the workforce, our unemployment rate and the national unemployment rate is 3.5% or is lower in Wisconsin.
Right.
So childcare is holding back a lot of people from, affordable childcare is holding back a lot of people from getting in the workforce. And then there's a lot of seniors or close to seniors who just left the workforce. So in terms of that, how does your...
I'm not one of those.
You're providing an example. Keep on working.
Keep on working.
Keep on working. How does your expanded family, the paid family leave thing fit into that and fit into the workforce solution?
Yeah, that I found, and that they are connected. We need to connect the dots. The paid leave issue is important, and I'll use a small example. I was recently over in the western part of the state, right on the border of Minnesota. Minnesota is about to enact paid leave, and the employers that I was talking to that day were concerned about their Minnesotans who work there, saying, paid leave is something that's important to us as employees. We're headed back over across the river. And so it puts us at a disadvantage. And also, frankly, paid leave is going to make our workforce more resilient, in that the workers have the opportunity to take paid leave, get better if they need to do it, take care of something that's not work-related, and make them better workers. And so I think a good discussion about that would be a significant improvement. The legislature just can't throw it out. We're going to be surrounded by states that have it, and it's going to make it more difficult for us to encourage people to come to Wisconsin.
Right, but the legislature is probably going to strip that out. So, or it may be a separate bill. I mean, and it's like that seems to be their intent.
Could be.
I mean, it seems like a repeat. That's what I was going to say. What's different? You said the tenor's a little bit different. But But you're actually are there real live negotiations on stuff like shared revenue?
We've talked about that with the leadership a couple of times. We've met 3 times, I believe. And yes, there will be a change in shared revenue. There's no question about it. I think Speaker Voss's comments recently about it maybe not going to happen at the level it does. Let's work through the budget. I think he will find there are plenty of resources there. I think it's way premature to say there's not enough money, since we know that there is $7 billion there. So I'm hopeful. I mean, this will be a good budget. I'm just asking the legislature to have discussions, have public hearings, have making sure that they understand that it's too easy just to strip something out, because you know what? The Fiscal Bureau puts them back every time they make a decision at the Joint Finance Committee. The governor's proposal is put back in there. If there's 5 options, one of those 5 is the governor's option. So they're going to be looking at it anyway. So let's have a discussion, folks.
Okay, so there's $7 billion in, I think we should call it one-time money, $7 billion in one-time money to use. There's a lot of federal money coming down the pipeline on infrastructure and clean energy and climate and health. In Wisconsin will get a share of that.
Right.
So this is it's sort of like a once in a generation opportunity in a way to use all these monies for something big, right?
Correct.
So your idea is to use it for these investments in K-12, child care, expanding family leaves, workforce, and plus tax relief, plus shared revenue. I guess those are the biggies, right?
Well, yeah, I would include broadband. I would include our University of Wisconsin system. But yes, you can say those are the big ones. But some, I'll use the issue of federal money for climate change. I mean, there's not a hell of a lot in the budget right now on the state side at this point in time for climate change, because it gets stripped out all the time. People need to understand that this is a big change, that we are actually looking at climate as a thing, and that energy production is a really important thing, and making sure that we're in a good place, including and on the other side of the climate change is issues around PFAS and clean water, which is something that has not been funded enough. So even if there's some federal money there, I would not put that as something that should be delayed. It should delay a state investment.
Okay, so to bounce the Republican, the co-chairs were here last week. Basically, they were saying that $7 billion is one-time money, so we shouldn't use it for any, although they say they want to use it for permanent tax relief. So
that's a shocking.
Yeah, right. But okay, but I mean, you've signed their measures for tax relief too, and it's likely to be in the budget that comes back to you. Right. Is there enough money to do all the things that people want? There they are. That's Voss calling right now.
Yeah. tell them to come on over. We'll have a debate.
Yeah.
Yes, there is enough, and the idea that $7 billion isn't there. I mean, that's just an outrageous thought process. And we are investing in one-time things, a whole bunch of that, whether it's in building projects or other things in our budget, are one-time things. And so a good hunk of that is into one-time expenses.
Right, and you want to put $1 billion, or you want to save $1 billion in bonding by using some of that cash.
Right.
Right, and so the Wisconsin Historical Society Chief Christian Overland wants to say thank you, right, Christian? Where are you?
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, there you go.
You're welcome.
The families, the students, and teachers across Wisconsin.
Thank you.
All right, you can't say I didn't give you a good one there.
Keep finding canoes in Lake Mendota.
Okay, so you're pretty confident shared revenue is going to happen?
Sure.
Although they're going to take out the local tax options?
Likely, but yes, I think shared revenue will get an upper. It has to. They do all the hard work. Whether it's public health, public safety, courts, you name it. That's local expenses, and over the last 15 years, the average increase, the largest increase over the last 15 years is 0.04. Not 4, not 40, but 0.04%. That's crazy. How can you operate a municipality? I don't care if you're 300 people township or city of Milwaukee. You cannot operate with that. And if we want the system to kind of crash, then that's exactly what will happen. It'll crash.
Okay, talking about UW system now. The safety valve used to be raised tuition. And there was a freeze, and now the freeze is gone. And I think when the freeze came off, there was this expectation that they'd be asking for an increase. So is it okay to have inflationary increases in tuition? I mean, it used to be on the border regions.
Yeah, it's certainly after years of a freeze, the answer is yes. And I think there's always some thought that there needs to be some sort of stopgap measure, and I think that's coming up now with the inflationary piece. It's odd that 2 years ago the Republicans said we'll take the freeze away, and the next time around we're putting a cap on it. So apparently they've changed their mind sometime in there for some reason. But I think in order for us to have a system that works, we can't be putting it into the hands of the students and the parents to pick up more. So the state has to play a better role in putting more money into the system per pupil, and that's been a problem. We're trying to change that this time around. And so I would prefer to not have any increases in tuition and have the system influenced more by money from the state. But that said, if there's not going to be enough money from the state, then they will have to raise tuition. We should keep it as minimal as possible.
Okay, also on education, I mean, you want a big hunk of the surplus to go through K through 12. You've already talked about that, along with the current state school superintendent. I want to focus a little bit on the reading program. So last session, you vetoed a bipartisan bill designed to boost reading scores, or that, and so you vetoed that. But then this time around, now there's something in the budget about that. And I'm wondering what is your approach versus what that approach was, or how does it differ, or what's your view as a former school superintendent on the state of reading in Wisconsin?
Well, let's start with the latter. It has to be better. It has to be better. It cannot be. It cannot exist as it does right now. Certainly, the pandemic played a huge role in that. But at the end of the day, we've struggled with reading outcomes for some time. So we need to take a different look at it. The difference between that bill and what's in the budget now, frankly, is I thought the other bill. I thought the bill took away authority from the boards of education in the state, which I think is the wrong approach. This is more about retraining teachers and providing support to teaching staff as it relates to reading, and I think it's a winner. I think it adopts practices that we've seen across the country working, and so I think it's a step in the right direction. It's pricey. There's no question about that. But education is where our economy starts and ends, frankly. And if we don't invest and try to take care of issues that are difficult, we're hurting our state's economy and our quality of life here.
Right. So it seems like that's something that could come back to you in a different form too. But there does seem to be a consensus building around that.
Yeah.
Though, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yes, that's a good thing. Consensus is a good thing.
Yeah, so I heard. Okay, so the Brewers. So you put the money in there to help maintain the Brewers stadium, and the pushback was surprise from the Republicans. Surprised that was in the budget, and surprised how you did it. So there's hints that could be a separate bill, like the Bucks arena. What's your thought about how that should happen? You put it in your budget, so that's
Sure.
how you want it to happen. But could it be a separate bill too?
Yes, absolutely. But in order to get that conversation started, it was appropriate for us to say this is an issue. And even though Republicans were meeting with the Brewers before I put it in the budget, they seemed to be surprised. I'm not sure why, but they seem to be surprised. Yeah, I think it's important. First of all, I'm a Brewers fan. I'll say that out loud. But at the end of the day, the Brewers bring a lot of money into the state of Wisconsin, and the cost will be the cost. It's a lot of money. It's several $100 million. The goal is to put the cash out front so that we don't have to bond for that and pay that interest, and I think it's a wise investment. The investment, the input from the people of Wisconsin and in terms of economic development far exceed what that cost is.
Right, and so we went through the having a sales tax on a 5-county area, and so that proved to be a rather tumultuous thing. So I'm just trying to draw the parallel here, so because we had this extra cash, extra surplus, you could take that and put it into the maintenance fund. That's a
yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So right, and the Brewers would also sign up to be there. Not that I think they were getting ready to leave, but at any rate, they're going to sign up for a long time.
I can't remember. I think it's 30 years, but yes. Yes. Yeah, to me, that's a good investment. It's a good investment in our future. Their wisest move along the way was putting a roof on that building, in that people from all over the state come to that game because they know it will be played.
Right, so spring ball is actually possible in Wisconsin.
That's right. That's
With
right.
the roof. Right, so yeah, my kid used to play baseball and I thought, wow, this is not really, I wish there were a roof over this little ballpark.
It worked.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go out to questions pretty soon. I just want to talk about another thing. Your cabinet secretaries are back before the legislature because some of them never got confirmed, and the ones who were confirmed, because it's a new term, go back to the legislature. What's the state of that? What's your analysis of what took place in the first term and what could be better in the second term?
Well, it will be better for one main reason. They've decided to take everybody up and approve them or disapprove or kick them out. In the last 4 years, I think they were saying Evers is going to be gone after 4 years, and so why should we approve these people? But in order for us to operate well as a state, we need to have people that are very competent, thoughtful people running the agencies, and they should be approved by the Senate. And that's their job, and they didn't do their job, and now they are going to do their job. And I believe that all the people that will go in front of them will be able to convince them that they're high quality and have Wisconsin as their main focus. They should get approved.
Now, the legislature, I mean, I think what I'm hearing this time around, well, I heard it last time around too, but more like, well, we want to address certain issues in that agency before we can confirm them. I mean, do you think that that's okay, where they want to hold the agency's feet to the fire, like DSPS on licensing, the backlog? I mean, do you view that as an acceptable tactic, I guess?
Well, I think the people that we're putting in front of them can answer those questions, but if it's going to be a witch hunt, that's not appropriate. I mean, we cannot operate with, and think about the Board of Regents or DNR. Those are appointees for boards. Those are important too, and I just think they have to look at the quality of the people and not, yes, is it reasonable to say, how are you going to improve this problem? Yes, but if it's going to be, how are you going to improve this problem, and then, by the way, we're going to fire you, what have you accomplished? Accomplished nothing. Hard feelings.
Okay, so you have some hard feelings. Are you getting over it?
I'm getting over it. I think the people will be approved. So I do believe that's a step forward.
Right. So this goes to I think, back to what I started off with. What's different is it's the tenor. It's not necessarily that there's like grand compromises instantly in the works. It's just that there's a better climate.
Right.
Is that it?
Right. Absolutely. But with the budget, and part of it's everybody's fault. We start out with me putting something out, people being able to talk about it, but it's probably going to end in July, and most of the decisions will be made after April, so this whole time until then is just people blathering back and forth, and that's our job, I guess. But at the end of the day, we will have a budget. It will be good for the people of Wisconsin. Will I get everything I asked for? No. Will they be disappointed that I veto some stuff? Yes. So we know all that ahead of time. So none of that's exciting news here. So we'll move on.
You're making my job hard to get news out of this. Come on now. I need you to be passionate and mad. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's take a...
That's not me.
Okay, I know.
That is not me.
All right, let's have some audience questions. So I'm going to call on a fellow educator right here. So stand up and state your name.
All right. Thank you. My name is Nathan Evers. I'm a high school history teacher from Fort Washington and a WEAF member. Governor Evers, Wisconsin educators are really glad to see that your budget includes an investment in student mental health. Can you talk a little bit about how this sets up public schools to take care of the growing needs of our students?
Yeah, and it is, I'm sure glad you asked that question. That's something I'm absolutely concerned about. It's a large amount of money. I think it's in the neighborhood of $200,000 or something like that. But you look at the recent CDC, I'm trying to think of the name of the polling they do every year, but this time was just extraordinary. You think about the fact that the percentage of teenage girls that consider or attempt suicide. It's a big N. It's not 1 or 2%. It's a big number, and you can look at just any other type of breakdown of different kids in our schools. We have to have more connections with mental health professionals. It's not that teachers can't be of help at doing that. This is big time help that's needed, and I am very hopeful. I think this is something we will get in the budget. I know the Republicans care about this as much as I do. It's just a matter of an end. But yes, we will succeed. But it's serious. The pandemic made it worse. But there's stories every single day that kids are going off the rails in a really dangerous way, and we just have to stop it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Jackie C. I'm on the board of directors of Horizon High School.
Hi.
We're the only recovery high school in the state of Wisconsin. Yeah. And we've been operating for 18 years, very successfully, but with a tiny budget. This year we are now operating and we run the whole school on $500,000, and we do have a mental health counselor who is on staff. We have a very limited staff. We can only support probably about 20 kids maximum in the school. And that's been one of the problems, because we're not considered a charter school, we're not considered a public school, and yet Madison, all vicinity, all the high schools send to us. We look at alcohol and drug abuse is an incredible problem, not only Wisconsin, but the country. And we look at fentanyl and all this coming in. The DPI, one of the last surveys that we had was from 2019, showing that approximately 70,000 out of the 260,000 high school students had done alcohol. And the amount of drugs on there too is now. These kids have made an actual attempt, and they are recovering from alcohol and drug abuse. They are tested several times a week. They are in a sober environment, and they are thriving. I want to say that the state of Massachusetts, and there's less than 40 recovery high schools in the entire country. We are a success. We would like to help people learn from us. The state of Massachusetts now has 5 recovery schools, and the state is allocating $2.5 million per year, $500,000 to every one of these high schools. And that's what we would love to have. That's our budget, and we would love to see that comes in. We deal with the mental health along with the alcohol and drug abuse.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question, please? It's hard to hear.
Well, okay, the question was, would you support a Massachusetts-style recovery school program that is more than just one school? And I don't know whether there's a proposal in the legislature to do that, or whether you have a sponsor, but if it isn't in the governor's budget, which I don't necessarily think it is, then you need to push that through the legislature.
Senator James has come to the school.
Okay.
And we're looking at, we're opening up, there's going to be a couple of other senators coming, along with, we hope to get some of the assembly people coming to see the school and to come through. It's a fabulous school. It's on the corner of University and Whitney Way. And,
okay, well, thanks for sharing. Okay, let's go to this side of the room. Go ahead.
I hate to be the part 3. My name is Susan Manning, and I'm on a school board, and so you know they are talking about all the things. And for each and every one of you, just so you know, there are nights, like every other night, I can't sleep because I have no funding that I need for my schools. If you look at what we pay our new teachers, no one will come. And they're leaving us in droves. And our governor has listened and listened and listened to us talk about this. The irony is So the request is to cut taxes, yet we have to go to referendum because we're required by law to educate these students. I have no funding to be able to do this. So eventually I go to referendum, and if it's passed, it increases your property taxes. So you're in this really vicious circle. And on top of it, as these two people still spoke to, is the mental health issues have increased so dramatically that they are putting mental health clinics into the schools. And if you try and admit a student to the current children's adolescent psych facility, it's full.
Okay,
So
okay,
what-
okay. Oh, so is there a question?
What's your thought?
Okay, well, or,
Ask us.
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so you heard these two stories,
That's why it's a $2.6 billion increase. And it's simple as that. It's a large increase. Mental health is several $100 million increase. I can't imagine why some of that that's going to Madison School District cannot be used for your school, but we'll look into that. But no, the school board member is accurate. Right now, school districts survive by going to referendum, and if they go to referendum, they raise their property taxes, and people don't like that, and so it's a horrible situation. We're attempting to take care of it so that they don't have to go to referendum.
right, because the referendum approval is although it's been pretty high, is still pretty spotty.
Right.
All right, listen, we're going to go to a non-education question. Just bear with us. I know you're here for, welcome to Education Talk with Governor Evers. Okay, no, let's go over here.
It's like you know me or something. Governor, first, stand up there. First, I'd just like to say thank you for all the support for small business, especially through the pandemic. As a startup founder, a lot of the state support during that, very beneficial. With that being said, as a startup founder, I of course want to keep my company here, continue to reinvest in the state, and bring talent in to support economic development, right? But one of the big questions I have, and this might be a twofold question, is how do we stay competitive as a state when it comes to entrepreneurship and startups, especially looking at, other upper Midwest neighbors like Michigan, Illinois, Indiana. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. But that being said, a lot of these states have funds that are at $100 million or more. So I guess one, how do we support that? And two, how do we create a funds of funds at $100 million to continue to support and invest in startups to attract and retain them in the state?
Yeah, and it is in our budget. The exact amount is escaping me now. I don't know if it was 100 million, but it's a large number. And we will, startups in our state, we did really well over the last 4 years. Even during a pandemic, it was just extraordinary. So that the small investments that we do use are well used. We will be two things that I can respond to. We will be funding that, or proposing that fund of funds again. I saw Tom Still writing about it the other day in the Madison paper, so that hopefully he can convince some of the Republican legislators to do that. We had it in last time. I think it ended up being a smaller number, but it's really important. We can't just rely on what we have now. We have to be ready to support people in the future that are entrepreneurs. In addition, during the pandemic, we spent a fair amount of federal money creating new businesses on main streets, going into empty storefronts. About 8,500 new storefronts are now in operation in the state of Wisconsin that didn't exist before, and at a very minimal amount of money. Those people are doing well, and they hire locally, they buy locally, and they get involved with the Chamber of Commerce. They actually lift up neighborhoods almost overnight. So we're asking for some more money to use state money to do this in the future too, and to support those people that have already started.
Jim, go ahead.
Oh, Governor.
Over here. Hi.
Jim from ARP. So we were at all your listening sessions all over the state, and thank you for holding those. We had a contingent of ARP people here at all of them. We heard the same themes over and over and over at all of them, that folks are really need the expansion of high-speed internet, which is in your budget. They need support for family caregivers. You've got a credit in there to help them. Workplace retirement program. The same themes over and over again. My question is kind of like, we're in a situation of deja vu where from your last budget, same thing happened. They start from a base budget, and a lot of these great things that are helping seniors are just removed. Do you have a different strategy from today going forward to say, hey, these are not partisan issues. These are things that are helping folks. Wisconsin's getting older, and we got to take care of folks as they get older and get them the services they need. Is there a different tactic this time?
Well, I mean, I'm there too, right? So yes, I'm getting older too. We will continue doing what we have been doing, and that is reaching out to, I know where the Democrats are on this issue, on these issues, and this is a good example. We need to make sure that the Republicans are on message on this issue. There are all sorts of things that we need to be investing in as it relates to our aging population, including those tax credits that you're talking about. That's why I track, people say, well, why aren't you in the Capitol more? Well, I'm not in the Capitol because I'm spending my time out in the hinterlands outside of Madison, talking about these things, getting interviewed by local newspapers and local TV stations, and I'll continue doing that, and we will be doing it on issues, like I said, the last couple of days it's been on issues of child care. We'll be doing issues on how we're going to help the elderly in the state of Wisconsin also. But that's just me. I mean, we also, I find it interesting when I go around the state talking to people. I say, well, have you talked to, your Republican legislator on this? And it's just like, it's usually no. I don't think it's because they're Republicans. I just think people need to get engaged in a way that whoever their legislator is, they're actually communicating with them, because it is not happening now.
All right, we got a question over here. Go ahead, shout it out. Yeah.
Okay. Kathy River with Madison Brain Center. I guess I can't get up. But,
That's right.
Hello.
He can see you.
Okay. So I have a bunch of teenagers and young adults around my life, and a lot of them, and there's the social media thing. And when I talk to them, sometimes they ask me my opinion on things, but it doesn't appear that we have like civic social media issues posted in and around, or videos or ways, bipartisan, I don't care, but
Right.
really saying at younger ages you must get involved outside of just school. And there used to be things like that a long time ago. There used to be editorials in places, if you're not looking at newspapers, and right now it's small groups for me that I hear people are pouting things I don't believe in. So what can we do coming from our civic duty in government to keep bringing up issues, even if it's both sides, and say you have to get involved?
I just want to point out that the Newspaper Association, Wisconsin Newspaper Association, has a civics education program. So I can get you in touch with somebody there.
Well, I put them in with that, but I'm talking about that doesn't always get out into the big social media venues. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, newspapers. I used to work at the newspapers.
No, but I was talking about at those age brackets.
I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be involved in this. I should let you handle this. Will you rescue me, please? You are enjoying that too much, aren't you?
Yeah. All questions go to my right. Well, we used to require civics and citizenship taught in our high schools. I think that's a reasonable solution. I think we've gone away from that a bit, but it is a difficult time for school boards. If you're talking about high school kids, and you may be talking about other young people too that are adults, but it's hard to be a school board member nowadays, in that you have people expecting you to get rid of all sorts of things that let kids think. You think about the things that school boards are being challenged on right now about diversity and inclusion. So you're saying we shouldn't discuss those things? We shouldn't we shouldn't have our kids thinking about, I wonder why we put Japanese Americans into camps during World War II. Why is that wrong? Why would it be wrong to talk about that with high school kids and say, what do you think about this? Was that a mistake? Was that the right thing to do? I mean, I can't imagine anybody would consider it the right thing to do, but they're being challenged on some really basic things now. And so that even gives me less hope, frankly, on the issue that you're talking about. This will be a short-lived thing going forward, but right now our country and our school boards are in just a hell of a position.
But I'm talking about from like the state of Wisconsin, just promoting getting involved.
Oh.
I mean, like really in social media, really pushing it.
Yeah, we can do more. We do it now, but we can do more, absolutely.
Okay, Ron.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Governor.
Sure.
Question about income tax was a short prelude. Over 100 years ago, we were the first state to pass a progressive income tax. And now we hear people saying that that's unfair. And I believe your position is that we ought to maintain a progressive tax as opposed to a flat tax.
Right.
So perhaps you could speak to that, sir.
Sure, absolutely. That's a dead issue for me. That will be a veto of a budget if I get a budget that is going to be a fair tax, which means that most of the savings go to wealthy people. My preference and my belief is that we will end up putting that money into middle class tax cuts just like we have in the past. But a flat tax is a non-starter.
Quick follow-up.
Right.
Last week when other folks were here, they said it would make us less competitive to have a progressive tax.
I don't see that. I don't see that at all. You know, our main concern is that people in the middle class are paying too much. It's very difficult, you know, for them to go paycheck to paycheck. I would say that the people that earn more money in the state of Wisconsin, that's not an issue. Making it, you know, and there's no data to support that also, that somehow if we give very wealthy people a tax cut, a large tax cut because it's a flat tax, that somehow that's going to encourage our economy. There's no data that I've ever seen that's a truism.
Right. They also said that that's a goal. So it appears that that's not going to be a centerpiece of their tax policy. Okay, go ahead.
Daniel Smith, Cooperative Network. Thank you, Governor, for being here today and everything that you've done. One of the things that we're seeing in our state agencies, and I serve on the board of the Department of Agriculture, is just continued struggles to retain and recruit new people within the agency. So could you talk a little bit about your funding for state agencies? Because some of these jobs are for permitting and licensing are really crucial.
Right.
That we have to doing those.
Yeah, there's no question, and we have to compete with the private sector, and so we're looking at a 5% increase, generally speaking, a 5% increase this summer, and then a 3% subsequent to that. So that should raise our pay, which will be a significant help for us. There are certain places in the state of Wisconsin, our correctional institutions in particular, we need to raise that even more, and we will. We can't have correctional institutions if we don't have people that are working in them. I mean, that's the bottom line. And in the same way with some of our healthcare industries institutions. So we'll be looking for an increase in pay. That will help, but you know, the other thing that would help, frankly, is you know, it's easy to bash state agencies, and you know, it takes a special person to work in state government, and you know, obviously, if they get into positions where they're a target of some of the criticisms, that's an issue. But it's hard to work in the state government, and that's one of the reasons why we're actually hoping to expand our reach and use working conditions so that people can work from home, from out of state. this happened when I was at the Department of Public Instruction. It still happens that the best person for a job doesn't want to move to Madison, doesn't want to pay more rent. They'd rather live in Rhinelander. And if they live in Rhinelander and they're the best person for the job, they should get the job. And we can make that happen with technology. So we're working hard to make sure that our workforce is diverse and diverse as it is across the state of Wisconsin, and I think that will help also.
Yeah, you talked about, I'm just going to follow up on that to finish off. I mean, you talk about corrections, prisons, the vacancy rate there for guards is still very high in some of the in some of the maximum security prisons too. And then, you have assistant DAs who are quitting. And I don't know how hard it is to find somebody to take a DA's job, but that is probably not that easy either. So what about, again, this is not, it's acute in healthcare, it's acute in manufacturing, acute in education, but, you're dealing with it, across the board in many facets of government.
Absolutely. We're asking for more prosecutors, more assistant district attorneys. We're asking for more public defenders. We're asking for more folks to work in our Department of Justice. The entire system of justice in the state of Wisconsin is right on the edge just because we don't have enough human beings doing the work. And we've asked for significant numbers there. And I don't think they're even numbers that can be challenged. That we need help. It takes somebody that's in the system many more months to get into court because there are not enough people to help them either protect their rights or to prosecute them. So right from the get-go, we need more people, and I think we can make an argument about that. I mean, if we can't, then I don't know what the hell we can.
Well, it seems like there's some growing consensus on that too, because this is not just a Madison problem. I mean, it's happening all over the state. So, see how many areas of consensus there are.
Well, let's keep going.
So you should be like thrilled.
It's good. Well, there will be. There's no question about it, and I'm looking forward to a good budget. And Republicans are good people, just like Democrats are, and we'll get through this. I'll be sitting here next year at this time talking about all the good things that we've accomplished.
All right, we'll mark that down. What? Oh, you want one more question? Okay, Camille.
Hi, my name is Camille Haney, and I'm not a lobbyist. For 40 years, I owned a small business, and I had offices in Madison and Washington, D.C. Why Washington, D.C.? Because when my return address was Pennsylvania Avenue, I could charge more to my clients than I could from Mifflin Street. Remember that, all you lobbyists out there? For years, I was a member on the board of NAWBO, a new nickname for you, NAWBO, the National Association of Women Business Owners. And for the most part, we were not asking government for anything except to stay the hell out of our way and to give us a seat at the table so we were part of the discussion. And I hear that coming from different segments of this room. So I want to know from you, what is the tenor of your office? You talked about tenor. Last week we talked about reform. What is the tenor of your office about women business owners who make up a large part of the state's economy?
Yeah.
How are you involving women business owners in your decision-making process?
Yeah, absolutely we are, and we've been involved with WIBIC for years, that provide financial resources to women, help women get into the job markets and owning businesses. So we've been very supportive of that. If you look at the makeup of the governor's office, the gender makeup, it's 90% women. So there's no problem as far as my particular staff And I think there's plenty of opportunities through the various organizations that we support, and WIBIC is one of them. I can't remember what it actually stands for, the words or the letters, but they help train women and to own a business and to keep a business running and to provide resources for women entrepreneurs. And so and during the pandemic, when we had these small business owners opening shops and empty storefronts in Wisconsin, I think the majority of them, most of them are women, and we've been supporting them too.
Thank you. By the way, I write at least one editorial, letter to the editor, every week. And some of them even get printed.
All right. Thank you, Camille. Thank you, sponsors, Hush Blackwell, American Family Insurance, Xcel Energy, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wisconsin, ARP Wisconsin, Walmart, and thank you, Governor Evers. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you.